My name is Ava Morgan, and if you looked at me now, standing in my glass-walled office on the 57th floor of a Manhattan tower, you'd think I had it all figured out. The skyline stretches before me like a painting of everything I've fought for. My reflection blends into the lights, silk blouse, diamond watch, the faint tremble in my fingers that no one ever sees. It's a quiet evening. My assistant has gone home. The city hums below, and I'm reviewing projections for a deal that could push my company past $421 million in valuation. Then my phone buzzes. Dad. I freeze. The name lights up the screen like a ghost I never buried. It's been almost 3 years since we last spoke, since the night he looked at me across the dining table, veins tight in his neck, and called me a lowlife who forgot where she came from. I swallow hard. Back then, I was still sending money home, still pretending the love I gave would one day mean something. But after that night, I built walls instead of bridges. Now, as the phone keeps buzzing, I stare at it, my pulse steady but cold. Part of me wants to let it ring out, but another part of me, the same foolish heart that once believed his approval mattered, presses accept. Hello, Dad, I say softly. And that's where the past begins to rise again. I was 22 when I first realized love could sound like disappointment. Back then, I was fresh out of college, a business degree, a notebook full of plans, and a wild belief that if I worked hard enough, my father would finally look at me the way he looked at my brother, Ethan. I still lived at home in Cedar Falls, Iowa, where every dream felt too big for the kitchen table. I remember the night perfectly. The smell of Mom's roast chicken, the sound of ESPN blaring from the living room, and my heart beating against my ribs as I told them, I'm starting my own company. Dad laughed. Not a joyful laugh, a sharp, cutting one. Ava, this is real life, not one of your college projects. You can't just build a company out of thin air. I've got investors, I said quietly. It's an online retail concept, handmade home brands, ethically sourced. I've been working on it for a year. He put his fork down, his voice hardening. You need a real job. You've got responsibilities now. You help your family, remember? We don't need another dreamer. The word stung. I'd been paying their utility bills since sophomore year, tutoring nights to keep us afloat when Dad's construction business slowed. But somehow, I was still the irresponsible one. I am helping, I whispered. This could be something big. That's when he slammed his hand on the table. The plates rattled. You think you're better than us now? Acting like you're some big-shot entrepreneur. You're just a lowlife chasing fairy tales. Silence filled the room. Mom looked down. Ethan bit his lip. Something inside me cracked that night. Not out of anger, but grief. After dinner, I went upstairs and packed. One suitcase, my laptop, and my grandmother's gold pendant, the only thing I had left of her. On the back, faintly engraved, were 3 words she always told me. Know your worth. When I walked out the door, Dad didn't stop me. Maybe he thought I'd crawl back within a week. But I remember standing under that cold, Iowa sky, whispering to myself through the tears. One day, they'll know who I am. The first few months after I left home were brutal. I rented a tiny studio apartment in Chicago, 1 room, barely enough space for a bed and a desk. The walls were thin, the heat barely worked, and every night, I'd fall asleep staring at the ceiling, wondering if my dad was right. But giving up wasn't an option. Not anymore. I poured every ounce of myself into my idea, an online platform connecting small artisans to buyers looking for sustainable, handmade home goods. I called it Haven and Hearth. It sounded warm, safe, the kind of feeling I'd been missing. By day, I waited tables. By night, I built the website, wrote product descriptions, and reached out to local crafters. There were nights I cried into my coffee, watching the numbers in my bank account drop. Then one day, something shifted. A woman named Lydia Rhodes, the owner of a boutique interior design firm, replied to one of my cold emails. She wanted to feature some of our pieces in her magazine spread. I couldn't believe it. When we met, she looked me straight in the eye, confident, poised, the kind of woman who'd seen the world chew people up and spit them out. You've got something here, Ava, she said. But you need to start thinking like a CEO, not a survivor. Those words changed everything. Lydia became my mentor, taught me how to pitch, how to price, how to protect my vision. Under her guidance, I stopped apologizing for dreaming big. I worked 16-hour days. I pitched investors until my voice cracked. I shipped boxes myself, handwriting thank you notes for every order. Slowly, the spark caught fire. Our first viral moment came when a popular influencer posted a video showing one of our handmade ceramic lamps. Overnight, our orders skyrocketed. Then came interviews, partnerships, and within 2 years, our first million in revenue. But I kept quiet about it. I still called home once a month, short, polite conversations with Mom, careful not to mention too much. When Dad asked, "You doing okay?" I'd just say, "Yeah, I'm managing." What I didn't tell him was that managing meant employing 30 people, signing checks that could buy the house I grew up in twice over. Even when the company hit its first $50 million milestone, I posted nothing personal online. My success was my secret, my armor. Because deep down, part of me still craved that one thing I'd never gotten, his approval. One night, after closing a huge deal, I sat alone in my office, champagne in hand, staring at the skyline. And I realized I'd built everything I once dreamed of, except peace. That would come later, after the call, after him. The call from my father came 3 years after I'd walked away. I remember the hesitation in his voice, that awkward shuffle of pride and desperation. "Ava, your mom told me your company's doing all right. I was wondering if we could visit. Haven't seen you in a while." Part of me wanted to say no, but something inside whispered it's time. So I agreed. They arrived on a Friday afternoon, Mom, Dad, and Ethan stepping out of a rental car in front of my downtown Chicago office. My company's name, Haven and Hearth, gleamed across the glass in bronze lettering. From the outside, it looked like any other corporate building. But once they walked through the revolving doors, silence wrapped around them like disbelief. The lobby shimmered with soft gold light. A massive mural stretched across one wall, a mosaic of artisans from around the world. The scent of sandalwood drifted from the reception desk. My assistant smiled, greeting them warmly. "Good afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. Morgan. Ms. Ava's expecting you. Right this way." They followed her through a hallway of glass offices, where employees in tailored suits nodded respectfully as they passed. My father's eyes darted everywhere, confusion, curiosity, maybe a touch of discomfort. And then he saw me. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of my executive suite, city skyline glowing behind me. Silk ivory blouse, tailored charcoal slacks, hair swept into a low bun, composed, calm. "Hi, Dad," I said softly. He tried to smile, but his voice wavered. This is your office?" I nodded. "One of them." Ethan let out a low whistle. "Ava, this is insane. You actually built all this." I smiled faintly. Every inch. They sat, still taking it in, the photos on the wall of me with world leaders, the framed article from Forbes, the award plaque reading Haven and Hearth, transforming ethical retail. My father ran a hand over his face. I don't understand. You told us you were just managing." "I was," I said evenly. "Just managing to keep the lights on. Managing to make payroll. Managing to build something out of nothing while everyone told me I couldn't." He looked down, shame flickering across his features. I walked to my desk and picked up a folder, a printout of the latest valuation, $421 million. I laid it in front of him. "That's what your lowlife daughter built." The words hung in the air, sharp but steady. No anger, just truth. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Ethan leaned back, speechless. My father stared at the numbers like they might vanish if he blinked. Finally, he whispered, "Ava, I didn't mean..." I cut him off gently. "You did. And that's okay." I needed to hear it. It taught me exactly what I was worth, and that I didn't need your permission to prove it. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the city beyond the glass. Then I smiled, softer this time. "But you should know something, Dad. Every time you said I was wasting my life, it made me work harder. Every time you doubted me, I learned how to believe in myself. He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. I was wrong. I know, I whispered. But maybe now we can stop pretending I failed. I poured 3 glasses of water, my voice calm, almost tender. You raised a fighter, Dad. You just didn't realize I'd win. He looked at me, truly looked for the first time in years. And I could see it in his eyes. Pride trying to surface through years of guilt. For once, I didn't need his apology to breathe. I already had everything I ever needed, right here, in this moment. The next morning, I invited them to breakfast in my penthouse. Sunlight poured across the marble floors, glinting off the crystal glasses and bowls of fresh fruit. It was the kind of place I once used to dream about, not for the luxury but for what it symbolized, peace earned through pain. Dad sat stiffly at the table, fingers drumming against the edge of his coffee cup. Mom kept giving him those quiet, urging looks, the kind mothers give when they know a man's pride is fighting with his heart. Finally, he cleared his throat. Ava, I know I've said things I shouldn't have. I wasn't fair to you. I took a slow sip of my coffee, then looked up, meeting his eyes. I know, Dad. You were scared. You wanted control. I understand now, but understanding doesn't erase the damage. He nodded. I thought you were throwing your life away. And you thought I was a lowlife for doing it, I said gently. But I wasn't. I was just trying to build something you couldn't see yet. He looked down, shame flickering again. I didn't call you here to argue, I continued. I called you here because you need help, and I'm willing to give it. But there are conditions. Ethan frowned. Conditions? Yes, I said firmly. If I help pay off the mortgage and get Dad's business back on track, it comes with changes. I laid my hand flat on the table, steady and sure. First, you stop talking down to people chasing dreams. Especially women. No more calling them unrealistic or foolish. You don't get to break someone just because you gave up on yourself. Dad blinked, silent. Second, you start therapy, both of you. This family's been drowning in unspoken pain for decades. It's time you faced it. Mom's eyes filled instantly. We can do that, she whispered. Third, I said softly, if you want to be in my life, it has to be as equals. No guilt. No condescension. Just honesty. The room was quiet for a long time. Then slowly Dad nodded. All right, he said. You've earned the right to say all this. You're right, Ava. I want to do better. I smiled faintly. That's all I ever wanted. I reached across the table, my hand resting lightly over his. I don't hate you, Dad. I just finally love myself enough not to let you hurt me anymore. His eyes filled, that strong, proud man who'd never once cried in front of me. And for the first time, he didn't try to hide it. As I looked at him, the man who once tore my spirit apart, I realized something I never expected to feel. Forgiveness. Not because he deserved it, but because I did. That was the real power shift. Not money. Not control. Just peace. A year passed after that morning. The changes were slow, imperfect, fragile, but real. Dad started therapy. Sometimes he'd call to tell me about a breakthrough. Awkwardly phrased, but sincere. Mom began volunteering again, rediscovering the woman she'd buried beneath years of compromise. And Ethan, he finally quit the corporate job he hated and started his own photography business. It was strange, watching everyone evolve once the silence lifted. For so long, I'd believed healing meant leaving. But maybe sometimes, healing meant returning. Not to the people we once knew, but to the parts of ourselves we'd abandoned for them. Still, something inside me knew my time in Chicago was ending. I'd built my empire, faced my ghosts, and now I wanted something quieter. A life where success wasn't measured in contracts or commas, but in sunrises, laughter, and peace. So one evening, I packed my things again. Not out of anger this time, but out of freedom. I moved to Mendocino, California, a small coastal town where the ocean hums against the cliffs and time moves slower. I bought an old cottage with sea blue shutters and a wildflower garden that refuses to grow straight. From my porch, I can see the waves crash against the rocks. Powerful, relentless, beautiful. Every morning, I make coffee, open my laptop, and run my company remotely. Sometimes, I visit the artisans I once only knew through emails, women who remind me that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just endures. One evening, while unpacking, I found my grandmother's pendant again, the one engraved with "Know Your Worth." I ran my thumb over the faded letters and smiled. Because now I did. I knew it in the way I breathed without permission, in the way I chose softness without losing strength, in the way I forgave without forgetting. And when I got a call from Dad one night just to say, "I'm proud of you, kid," I didn't cry. I just smiled into the sunset, the sound of waves filling the silence between us. My voiceover would end here, calm, certain, complete. I didn't move to escape my past. I moved to remember who I was before they told me I wasn't enough. And maybe that's what freedom really is, coming home to yourself. The ocean kept crashing. The world kept moving. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need to.